Hello everyone, I'm Riki Stamps, Director of Programs and Events, and I am so excited to visit with you today and introduce to you our special guest. First of all, I would like to have you go back a little bit to remember all the fabulous classical performances we've had at Butterfield. And we have enjoyed the most wonderful talent and entertainment on this stage, particularly our classical friends. And so now we have decided to call the performances of this nature the Butterfield Trail Village Stage Series. Along with that stage series, we will bring to you, if at all possible, an interview with the artist prior to the performance. And that way you get to know the artist and you have a connection when you do come to our lovely performance hall for these special concerts to be scheduled over the next several months and years. I'm so excited to introduce to you Michael McHale. Michael is Belfast-born and has already an outstanding international piano career. And we're so fortunate that he is here with us today, and we'll be talking about his performance for the upcoming concert this Thursday right here in the Performance Hall. Welcome, Michael. Thank you so much for being here.
Thanks, Riki. It's great to be here with you.
So I understand you just came from California. You met your wife, Laura, who is first violin for the London Symphony, and you had a nice little time in California before you came to Arkansas. But you live in London.
That's right, yeah.
By way of Belfast.
Yes, that's correct.
Well, tell us, if you don't mind, we really want to get to know you and understand who you are and why are you so drawn to the piano? When did you realize that the piano was your destiny?
Well, it was from a pretty young age, actually. So my dad, even though he never got piano lessons as a kid, when he was an undergraduate student in Belfast, he took a notion to go and find a piano teacher and try and learn, and he kind of made a little bit of progress and could play a few well-known pieces, and I really enjoyed it and loved music and loved listening to music as well. So when my two sisters and I were quite young, we actually spent a year living in the States, 6 months in Jackson, Mississippi, and 6 months in Reno, Nevada. My dad's a scientist, and he took a sabbatical year from the university in Ireland. And while we were out there, he bought an electric keyboard synthesizer and a little book to kind of beginner piano book, and he was going to attempt to teach my older sister Anne the basics of how to play the piano. And she wasn't that interested in it, and she didn't really want to practice, and she was kind of complaining about it a bit. But I was kind of bobbing around looking for a bit of extra attention, and thought, can I have a go? Can I try it? So once he'd finished attempting to teach my sister, he said, "Okay, sure, I'll kind of show it to you." Explained the kind of the 5 fingers and middle C on the piano and this kind of stuff. And then by the end of the week, I'd got to the end of the book myself. It just all made sense, and I just was fascinated by the whole thing. And and that kind of fascination has never gone away. I'm still as drawn to it as I was then.
Well, your career obviously shows your love for the music and for the classicals. So now I'd like to move on to our other guest on stage with us today, Dave Thomas, who is the president of ACM 360 Artists, based right in Fayetteville, Arkansas. He represents several of the artists that we've enjoyed on the Butterfield stage over the last 3 years, maybe?
Yes.
And Dave, it's such a pleasure to have you here as well.
Thank you.
You do manage Michael, and I know you are so excited that he's in Fayetteville and at Butterfield Trail Village.
Yes, and in fact, a little inside information about this. Laura and the London Symphony were doing some performances in Los Angeles, and Michael and Laura, and you really should be the one telling this, but they were married just before COVID started and never got to take a honeymoon, because all flights and travel were canceled.
Yes.
So the performance in Los Angeles was used as a substitute honeymoon, and so he left his honeymoon to come and perform with you. So
Wow.
There is no greater dedication than that.
No greater dedication. Well, we're
I think
so
Laura
honored.
will forgive him too.
Well, we
But-
certainly wish she was here, but she did have to get back home, and so
Yeah.
maybe we will meet her again in the future.
Hopefully next time.
Absolutely.
Yes, we're working on actually some unusual pairings because while Michael was in Los Angeles, he met with another friend of Butterfield Trail Village that you're all familiar with, Jubilant Sykes. And so we're looking at the two of them performing together. And then I'm trying to talk Michael into doing a special performance with Laura, and where he accompanies her on violin, and she's obviously world class.
Have you performed together before?
Yeah, we've done several concerts in Ireland and in the UK, and it's always really fun. And also, as touring, traveling musicians, both of us, it's a nice way to make sure we're in the same place, at least for a few days a year.
Let's make that happen right here at Butterfield Trail
Absolutely.
Village, and you can have a week in Northwest Arkansas to enjoy performing and enjoy each other with a little time off.
Sounds great.
Yeah. So, Dave, one thing I've come to appreciate working with you over the years are the artists that you select to represent. I've already picked up on this with Michael, but all of your artists are kind, personable, and down to earth is how I would like to phrase that. Tell us what it means to you to have such an amazing group of artists like this, particularly Michael.
Well, you start with the premise that if you're considering working with an artist, they're a world-class artist. And then you look at really probably the most important thing after that is what they're like as people. And we all enjoy working with wonderful people. And so the collection of artists that we have the privilege of working with is a very carefully assembled group of wonderful people, as well as world-class artists. And Michael, I'll brag for him because that's my job. But, it makes it so much more enjoyable when you're working with wonderful people who
It
love
really
people
does.
and love performing.
Well, Michael, you have traveled the world already at such a young age. I'm curious to tell us, when is the first performance that you realized this is everything you wanted to do, everything you wanted to be? Which performance is the most memorable for you?
Well, gosh, that's a really good question. I mean, I've had memorable performances in my childhood that made me realize that I enjoyed performing. So the first solo recital I gave, I think I was about 10 years old, and I really enjoyed playing it. But because I was quite shy, the minute I finished, I just walked straight off the stage. And one of my teachers said to me, "You have to be kind to your audience." Bow, thank the audience for enjoying it and be glad that they enjoyed it. So but I loved the playing, and then I just scuttled away off stage. And so hopefully I think I've learned a lot from those early experiences, and one of the things I enjoy most is that interaction with the audience. And so kind of few other memorable performances. Maybe one would be my first performance with my local professional orchestra in Belfast, where I grew up, the Ulster Orchestra, and I performed the Beethoven Third Concerto with them when I was about 19 or 20, and it was live on BBC Radio and everything, and that was quite a big, exciting moment.
Absolutely.
And then I've been lucky that there's been many more after that, but those are a few little early highlights anyway.
Give us a rundown, one or both of you, of the symphonies and orchestras you have performed with.
Yeah, so I've performed with a few over here. I've performed locally with the Fort Smith,
Yes.
just down the road, and with the Minnesota Orchestra in Minneapolis, with the Jacksonville Symphony, and then later this year I'm playing again with the Mid-Atlantic Symphony in Maryland, which I'm really looking forward to. I've also played with the Chamber Orchestra up in Boston and various other ones. And then I've played with the Moscow Symphony Orchestra a couple of times, once in Argentina and once in Italy.
Oh, wow.
Which was really interesting because I was playing Rachmaninoff, Russian music, and that was I was quite intimidated as an Irishman playing Russian music with this great Russian orchestra, but luckily it went really well, and it was a very kind of exciting experience. And also living in London, I've been lucky to perform with a lot of the London orchestras, including the London Symphony and the City of London Sinfonia, London Mozart Players, and the BBC Symphony there as well. So,
Where will you be going when you leave Fayetteville?
so I'll fly back to London, and my next couple of concerts are actually going to be in Dublin at the end of the month. The first of which is quite an unusual project. It's a family concert for kids, and it's this amazing animated film designed to introduce children to the music of Chopin. And these animations, the company that made the film are really top class animation company, and they've created this whole story about a young girl who finds a magic piano, and she travels around the world, and the entire soundtrack is made up of Chopin etudes, which I will play live along with the film, and that's quite a challenge, as you might imagine, because firstly, Lang Lang did the soundtrack, so I have to keep up with him and play it at the exact same speed and the exact same way that he played it. So on top of kind of staying on top of all of that, I have a laptop on the side of the piano, which has the film with a time clock, and then in my score, in my written music, I will have little cues saying, when the wave crashes at 1 minute 23 seconds, you have to reach this exact note.
Oh my goodness.
So it's a kind of incredible challenge, but I did it once before a few years ago, and it ended up going really well, and it was just a bit different and something that was quite fun. It was a fun challenge, so I'm doing that again, and then the week after that I do a concert in a big festival, New Music Festival in Dublin, where I'm playing 2 world premieres by 2 different Irish composers, one which is a solo piano prelude, and then to close the concert, a new piece entitled Waiting for Elvira by this Dublin composer, Andrew Sinnott, and it's inspired by the Mozart piano concerto that was the soundtrack in the movie Elvira Madigan, which hopefully some of your members here will remember that wonderful film with the Mozart Piano Concerto score, and he's written this very clever piece for piano and orchestra, which I'll play with the RTE Radio Concert Orchestra in Dublin. So yeah,
That
I've got
ought to
some
be
interesting
so
challenges.
exciting.
Yeah.
I love the combining the different mediums together to make a performance like that with a film. That is just wonderful,
Absolutely. Yeah.
especially for children.
Yeah, and
Introduces them to the classics.
exactly, because it's so different than just the soundtrack being played like you would at the movies. When you see the piano on stage, and with me playing it, it's kind of that more immediate experience. But then there's also the great movie that the kids all will really enjoy. So it's a really fun way to introduce a younger generation to classical music.
Can you find that on YouTube?
Oh gosh, I'm not sure.
That would be so awesome to be able to see that performance.
Yeah.
Well, shifting to our performance this Thursday night, tell us some of your selections you've chosen for Butterfield.
Yeah, so I'm going to start with Beethoven's Moonlight Sonata, the first movement of which, of course, is one of the most famous pieces of classical music ever written. It's been used in countless film scores, and it's just one of the most amazing pieces of music ever written. And the whole sonata, maybe a lot of people will know the first movement, not so many people will know the rest of the sonata always. And the second movement's this beautiful little short minuet and trio. And then the finale, the third and final movement, is this stormy, tempestuous kind of tour de force, which is far removed from the beautiful, delicate, soft opening movement. So that's what I'll start with. I'm going to include a few short pieces by a great friend of mine who's a Hollywood composer, Cliff Idleman. And it was with Cliff and his wife Claire that Laura and I were staying for a few days in Santa Monica last week. So it was great to see them again, and we're going to be doing a new recording project this summer with the London Symphony. But I'm going to play 3 short solo pieces that he wrote for me that I recorded in LA a couple of years ago.
That will be a treat.
And they're from a series of pieces entitled The Five Tales, and they're about kind of different visions and experiences in a magical forest. So they're very kind of cinematic and colourful and really, really beautiful. And yeah, and then the final work that I'm going to play is one of the most epic piano pieces ever written by the great Russian composer Mussorgsky, and this is his Pictures at an Exhibition. And it was originally written as a suite of solo piano pieces. It was then orchestrated by several different people, including Ravel, and it's often played in symphonies around the world in the orchestrated version, but I personally love the piano version even more because it's the original, and I'm a pianist, so I guess I'm a bit biased.
No kidding, no
But
kidding.
it's amazing, and it really, it was a dear friend of his died at quite a young age, who was an artist and architect, Victor Hartmann, and Mussorgsky and several of their mutual friends put on an exhibition of his works to commemorate his career. And it was at this exhibition that Mussorgsky, while walking around the gallery and looking at these great pictures by his dear friend, he went home from the exhibition and in 3 weeks wrote this incredible piece as a tribute. And so all the different pictures that he was inspired by, you can hear, have their own separate little movements. And so before I play it, I'll kind of introduce and explain a little bit the story behind the pictures.
The notes that you share with the audience means a lot. It really does. It just helps everyone understand, even though they may have heard the piece, it just helps bring it around and it puts a real thick story to it. So I appreciate you doing that. That means a lot to the audience here at Butterfield for sure.
Absolutely.
Dave, do you have anything else you want to
Well, it also,
mention?
that work ends with something that's very poignant, the Great Gate of...
The Great Gate of Kyiv, the capital city of Ukraine, which of course has been in the news for very sad reasons in recent weeks. So it will be hopefully a tribute to the bravery and courage of all the Ukrainians who've been suffering so much in the last month and more, to play this piece that's a great kind of tribute to their
A very
capital
special
city.
tribute. That is wonderful. That is so wonderful. Thank you for
There's
bringing
also
that.
one other story that all of the audience members should know about, and that is that Michael's been touring the world in recent years with arguably, easily the greatest flute player in the world, Sir James Galway, excuse me. And anyway, but the story of how they met, you've got to tell.
Well, this is a fun one. So one of my good friends from Youth Orchestra, who was the flute player, a guy called Gareth McLernan, he studied with James Galway, studied the flute, and became friendly with him. And anytime Galway would come through London, he would try and meet up with him for lunch and catch up. And anyway, Sir James was playing the Mozart Flute and Harp Concerto with the London Symphony, and it was just the week before Christmas one year. And my friend Gareth was meeting up with him for lunch, and while they were at lunch, Jimmy got a call on his phone from the BBC saying, would you come in and do a promotional interview and performance for the concert? And it's a kind of Christmas special, so it's in the Radio Theatre. There's going to be an audience of 150. So he told Gareth that this call he just received, and Gareth said to him, quick as a flash, you have to phone my friend Michael and get him to play piano with you, because it was such short notice, and I lived in London. And so he was like, okay. So then Gareth immediately lets me know and says, just to warn you, you're going to be getting a call from James Galway soon, asking if you're free to play with him for this BBC promo. And so sure enough, 30 minutes later, my phone rings and I get this call. Hello there, this is James Galway. I hear you play the piano. And yes, I said this is the right number. I do indeed play the piano. And so it was all set up, and they were to bring Sir James and his wife Jeannie were to bring the music along, and we were to have a rehearsal an hour before the broadcast because it was live on the radio with the audience
Just
and the whole
an
thing.
hour.
And unfortunately, their car didn't turn up at their hotel. They had to get another one arranged at short notice. and it turns out that they arrived 5 minutes before the broadcast was due to go on air. So they were rushed into the theatre, and we managed to have time to play through half of one of the two pieces. Bearing in mind I hadn't seen the music yet, so I was sight reading it, and we played through half of one of them, and the producer comes over and says, "You have to stop, it's the red light's about to go on. We're about to go live on the radio." So we just had to stop, and then a few minutes later, we started again, but this time playing in a live broadcast.
Oh my
And
goodness.
luckily, I had a good page turner, because I genuinely did not know what was coming up on the next page. So if they'd done 2 pages at once, I would have been in trouble. But
Wow.
thankfully, it went very well. And after the first piece, then the presenter of the show started interviewing Jimmy about his life and career and about his concert with the LSO. But during this, one of the listeners phoned in the show, and they said, "I hear Michael McHale's playing the piano on your show, and it's very near Christmas. Last year we heard him also on the BBC playing his own version of Santa Claus is Coming to Town. Could you ask him if he could do it?" And so they kind of mentioned this to me, and I said, "Yeah, sure, if you want me to, that's fine." And so the presenter, after he's interviewed Galway, comes over to me and says, "So, Michael, one of our listeners has asked if you might be able to play Santa Claus is Coming to Town." And I'm sure James Galway's sitting there wondering, who's this piano player coming in, stealing the limelight, getting
Yeah.
requests on his slot? So he was probably kind of already going, "What's going on here?" So I launch into it and start playing it. Then halfway through, he joins in on the flute, not to be outdone, and then he switches it to Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer. And then I switch and start playing that with him, and the audience are just in stitches laughing at the whole
bet.
thing. And we were just basically having a ball, kind of trying to outdo each other live on the radio. And so we just got on like a house on fire, and we played together ever since. And yeah, it was just
That's
an
awesome.
amazing
Yeah.
experience. But a real baptism of fire.
Yeah.
Wow, depending on a page turner like no other.
Yes.
Oh my gosh. Well, I know that that's a special time. It's not Christmas here, but I was wondering if you could give us just a little taste of an Irish tune that many people in the audience will recognize. Will you be playing this piece during your performance Thursday evening?
Absolutely. If there are any calls for it, I will deliver, and I will play it for you again. So just let me know if you like it, and I will reprise it with joy.
All right. Well, do you have anything else, Dave?
No. It's. I think the music will speak for itself.
I believe so. Michael, it is such an honor to have you here. We're excited for you to join us Thursday evening. And ladies and gentlemen, don't forget we have a wonderful hors d'oeuvre and wine social at 5:30 in the lobby, and the concert will begin at 7 p.m. in the performance hall. This performance is open to residents and Carriage Club, and right now that is the amount of our guests. So this is basically a private concert. Do you want to share about the church performance as well?
Yes, there is Butterfield Trail Village. Riki has kindly allowed there to be another performance, which will be held at Covenant Presbyterian Church on Weddington Friday at 7 p.m. No hors d'oeuvres, unfortunately, for that, but it will be a free performance open to the public. It's a classical outreach series, much like your new series that you're putting in place here, the Butterfield Trail Village.
Well, any
stage
members
series.
of our Butterfield family, if you're unable to attend the performance here, then you're welcome to join this one
Absolutely.
at the church as
Absolutely. And some of you who see the performance on Thursday, no doubt will want to see it again on Friday.
well. Absolutely.
So no pressure, Michael.
No pressure. Well, thank you so much for joining us again, and I hope you enjoy your time in Fayetteville, and we look forward to hearing you right here on stage Thursday evening, and we'll just step off and let you give us a little taste of an Irish tune that most of you might recognize.
Great. Thanks so much, Riki.
All right.
Looking forward to it on Thursday.
Let's turn your mic up.
Oh, and just before I play it, I won't tell you what it is because you'll probably recognize it, but as well as the kind of first version, the first thing you'll hear, which is the Irish tune. I put my own little American twist in, so it's Irish and Irish American.